So hello everyone, you're all very welcome to this year's edition of Grad Ireland Live and the first talk of the day. So in this presentation, Spring Clean Your CV, Angela Collins, Head of Careers and Careers Advisor at the Waterford Institute of Technology, will be giving you practical advice on how you can make your CV stand out from the crowd and have real impact when applying for graduate roles and programs. As always with these talks, you can ask questions by putting them in the chat box below. If someone has already asked a question you were thinking of, or you just like the question, you can upvote it, and time permitting, we will get to the most popular questions at the end. But without further ado, I'll now pass you over to Angela.
That's great. Thanks, Piers, and also thanks to Gabby. Yes, my name is Angela, and I'm the Careers Advisor in Waterford Institute of Technology. And I suppose the spring is around the corner. No better time to maybe to encourage you to spring clean your CV and just have a look at what you have in it and that. Let's see. Did move a little. Oh yeah, perfect. Okay, so I suppose just some headings first. So 5 tips to help you spring clean your CV. So very much to keep in mind, be brief. Under the main sections of your CV, it's important, as you say, less is more, because for a lot of people, we forget that some are going to read our CV with thousands and hundreds and thousands of other CVs as well. So be specific as well. Your CV that would, the CVs that get noticed usually focus on, I suppose, specifics, the tangible results, and they can quantify what you've done as well. And that's easy for the reader. So when you're putting your CV together, always think of the reader. Although you should be as specific as possible throughout the entire CV, I suppose to focus around your work experience or related work experience is very important here. So you're looking at your past jobs, the particular roles you have, the responsibilities, and your accomplishments. And that's really the main section of your CV that employers will focus on. And if you are a raw graduate and you've struggled maybe through the pandemic to get specific work experience in your area, then I'd encourage you, I suppose, maybe to give more details of your course, projects that you might have covered, site visits, or webinars or different things that are additional in your education section as well. So this is the information you present here, and how you present it is important as well. And it really can depend on the faith of your CV, because employers are spending very little time kind of scanning your CV first, because they've got lots of CVs to look at. Again, be active. So in your CV, what does active mean? So I suppose what we're encouraging you to do is to use action verbs. At the beginning of every sentence, you can use words like I've led, launched, directed, built, managed, generated. And that gives, I suppose, a lot more impact to your CV. Rather than a lot of students, when they're writing up their CV, they start under their duties and responsibilities saying, I did this, I did that, I did the other. So really, you should be writing your CV in the third person. And again, think of the reader. So avoid using I, and the action words help you avoid using I. Again, be selective. So focus on the information that is relevant where possible to your career goal, and edit out the rest. There's no need to focus too much on your second level achievements, your interests, and your volunteering work. And then you're kind of maybe reducing the space for something else. So be specific. Think about what you're writing. But I don't mean, leave it out, because there always are transferable skills gained from maybe achievements, hobbies, and interests as well. So do keep that in mind. Be honest, never lie in your CV, or don't stretch the truth, because you will get caught out in it. And again, I suppose the idea behind today's session is your CV should be a living document. So you should be constantly upgrading it, constantly looking at it, and editing it. And then I suppose doing a spring clean on your CV will help you get more interviews and ultimately find the better job. So when you are putting your CV together, I would encourage you, and it might sound odd, I suppose, to ask yourself, what's the purpose of the CV? What are the main sections you should include in it? Some general guidelines around it. And also I'm going to give you some information around covering letters and hints and tips in that area, because covering letters disappeared for a while, but they're very much back again. And that sometimes can give you the added edge, the fact that you've gone to the bother of writing a covering letter to accompany your CV. But do remember, and I'll say it again later on, your covering letter is a separate document. It's not the body of your email. It's a separate document and saved separately as well. So when you are creating your CV, first you may need to start assessing your skills and abilities. So review what you've been doing under your education, your work experience, your volunteering, and see what's relevant and what's related, as I said in the first slide, to the career that you're going down. Look at what you have achieved and then define what skills contribute to these achievements as well. So as I said earlier, what's the purpose of your CV? So if you think, why am I putting this CV together? And for a lot of us, the purpose is, I suppose, to get an interview. So your CV can be the first impression an employer has of you. And it is very difficult to get a second chance to form a first impression. That sounds a little bit maybe confusing, but what the employer sees when that CV arrives in the inbox is maybe their first impression of you. So you need to keep that in mind. So again, as I said earlier on, what's the purpose of your CV? It is to test if you can communicate the right level of detail in the right way. So you have a CV that you're presenting to an employer to encourage them to read it, to call you for an interview. And it is selling your education, your work experience, and your skills. So you've got to fit that into 2 pages, maybe 2.5, but you need to have that concise. So that's about testing that you can write down the right level of detail in the right way as well. And it is your sales brochure. No matter what your discipline is, you are selling yourself to that potential organization and you're letting them know that you are suitable for that role. It should outline your education and your experience to date. And then the big thing that employers look for, it should demonstrate a match between your skills and the skills required for the job. So when you look at your CV, you look at the job description. If you've got the skills that they mention in the job description, make sure they're put in your CV. And often, sometimes people forget to make that obvious. So an effective CV, so good CV will increase your chances of getting an interview, but not always the job. But the flip side of that is, if you don't spend time on your CV, you're going to end up with Oscar in the bin, because people haven't time. And I alluded to it maybe earlier on in the presentation, the time an employer potentially has to look at your CV, to scan through to see if you're a potential candidate. So how long would you think an employer spends reviewing their CV before they make a decision whether to interview you or not? Now, I suppose if we were doing a live session, we could do it, but because it's virtual, I'll kind of give you the answer straight away. So it's down to seconds. So 10 seconds sounds very, very little, because you might have spent a good few hours putting your CV together. Within seconds, somebody will scan that CV and see if you're a potential caller for an interview. So remember, the employer should define the job and the role, with the specific job spec and description that they're looking for to be filled. They will identify the key skills and the attributes for the job. So shortlisting, they're going to shortlist, look for a match between the candidate and the job spec. So your CV comes in, they go back and look at the job spec and they see, is there a match? So don't ignore the job description. Keep going back to it, keep referring to it. Bring elements of the job description into your cover letter. I wish to apply for this job. I've read the job description. From the job description, I noticed you required A, B, and C. From my work placement, I got experience in that. My final year project covered that particular topic as well. So the whole time, refer to it in the cover letter and also refer to it in your CV. So if they mention the skills and attributes on your CV, on the job spec, when you're writing up your CV, state those, make them obvious. So a clue is, remember, you should, I suppose a clue is to what to put into your CV can be in the job advert again. So 3 rules for your CV: keep it simple, clear, and short. And I would recommend a Word format CV is perfect. Don't get caught up in getting, which looks like very attractive CV templates. People 9 times out of 10 read across the page. So use the page space that you have well. Start on the left and write across. And that will also help you to kind of space out your information and keep it together as best as possible. Sometimes people have columns of information and they're going down one way and or their portrait, the other side is landscape. That's very time consuming for an employer. They want to just read it as quickly as possible. So keep it clear, simple and short. And then again, customize your CV for every position you're going for. You look at the job description and then if go back to your CV, but don't copy and paste it either. So targeting your CV, a lot of employers talk about encouraging students to target their CV or aim their CV for the particular job. So a successful CV is targeted to the specific job criteria set out by the employer. These criteria will be found in the job description and the person specification, and even sometimes on the website. So the job specifications are frequently divided into, they'll divide up and say, look, these are essential that you need to do the job. And then there's also a section called desirable. And the desirable requirements can be used to narrow down the candidates when there's a large number of high quality candidates as well. So if you don't meet the essential, for a lot of employers, they're going to press delete. So look at what they're looking for, and if you have what's essential, make sure you write that down. Again, you need to find out what the job involves and then think about how you meet these requirements. So again, go back to the duties and responsibilities they mention in the job description, and if you've got any of those or experience of those, then you need to quantify that, as I had said in the first 5 points of things to keep in mind. And again, it's very important to remember it's a matching process. So they're looking to see, are you the right match from your experience, your education to date, and the job. Okay, so target CV will highlight the evidence an employer is looking for, but a generic CV will hide it. It won't be obvious. So a checklist for you. And again, I've been correcting CVs for 29 years and the same errors pop up all the time. So ideally 2 pages, keep an eye on the footers and the headers, because sometimes CVs can go on an extra page because the footers and headers are too wide or too deep. So keep an eye on that. Check your punctuation, your grammar and your spelling. A lot of CVs that I get in, it's like that I'm an English teacher and I'm correcting those errors. So if you're sending a CV and there's a red line underneath it, before you send it to somebody, that means you need to check it and is there an error. Check the consistency, the different font styles, and usually Arial 11 or 12 can be good. Because often what happens, again, a student might say that one of the skills they have is attention to detail. And then when you're looking at the CV, the font sizes are different, the styles are different. So that shows to an employer you don't have good attention to detail. Check the format of it before emailing it and before you send it as a PDF. Experiment with the layout. I touched on that a little bit earlier, saying keep an eye on your footers and your borders. Are they very deep? Are they too wide? Proofread it. Don't have gaps in your experience. So if there are gaps, account for it. And you could be saying, look, 2021 or 2020 to 2021, I enrolled in a particular college. I left after a year and now I'm doing something else. So don't leave it out, because gaps will always ask them to have questions. Avoid using personal pronouns like not I the whole time. It should be written in the third party. No need for covering sheets or bindings, because at this stage, a lot of students are sending their CVs in attachment or uploading it. So you don't need cover pages or binders, even if you're posting it. Big thing I'd encourage you to do is save your CV using your name, not as my CV. The amount of CVs that come into employers and ourselves with the heading my CV attached. Who's my CV? Save your CV using your name. Again, avoid using tables if possible. That's very hard on the reader as well. So even if you have a table, make sure they're not or they're invisible. But also tables can take up a good bit of space. I bold your headings, no underlining. So it's important, again, think of the reader. So if you're reading something that's got loads of tables, loads of headings, and the headings are bold and there's lots of underlining, it can be very challenging for the reader. Again, to save long sentences and to save your space, use bullet points. And then, which I mentioned earlier on, your action words. So if you use bullet points, it saves you using long sentences as well. No photographs required in your CV. You don't need your date of birth. Black and white is perfect. You don't need color. And again, avoid using the fancy templates. That would be I suppose these, the feedback I'm giving you here is based on a questionnaire we did with employers as well. So that's what the employers are thinking. So your tips for your CV. So this template is a template we use with our students in Waterford Institute of Technology. Again, it's designed on the feedback from 200 employers we surveyed about 5 years ago, asking them when they're getting a graduate CV, what do they want? So this was the headings they asked for and the style. So again, writing across the page, the name, your address, your telephone number, your email, LinkedIn, is important as well. I know with people maybe working virtually, the address, depending on the industry, may not be as important anymore. So if you are in third level, you're starting with your education and working back. So what you're doing now, work back. The date, again, give the full title of your college, the full title of your course. And I suppose that you're educating the employer. Don't assume that they know what a business studies course in Waterford is like compared to a business studies in TU Dublin. You know, give the main subjects that you're covering. If you're doing a dissertation or final year project, educate them on that. Let them know what you're studying and what's involved in it. Because your dissertation or your final year projects could be in a topic or an area that they're interested in as well. If you've done or covered any additional projects that might be useful to your application, mention those, and really is the title and 1 or 2 lines giving a description of it. Second level, you know, you can make reference to it. A lot of accountancy firms still require you to give the details of your exams, but you can put your points level there, or you can also mention grades available on request. But it's good just to kind of have a track of them and have them nearby if needed. So then you're on to your work experience, again to start now. So it's in chronological, now working back. The name of the organization where they're based, you know, either the role you had or position that you have there, the date you worked there, and then your responsibilities and duties. Say what you did while you worked there. And then to finish that kind of section on the work experience, you're focusing on the skills that you gained. What skills did you gain from your work experience? Whether it was related work experience or unrelated work experience or volunteering. Again, mention, I suppose, the computer packages that you might have, the software, the hardware, operating systems. Don't assume the employer will know. If there's any that you've self-taught yourself as well. Language skills are always on the lookout for employers. So, you know, if English is your mother tongue, you don't need to put in, but if you did junior cert or leaving cert or taught yourself another language, put in the language you have and to what level, whether it's junior cert, leaving cert, or you have conversation. And then you have your interests and hobbies. So use headings, I suppose, to categorize your interests and hobbies. So maybe your sport, your community, culture. And I suppose sometimes your hobbies and interests give an insight to you as an individual as well. But again, don't give, you know, don't over, I suppose, give too much maybe details on them, as I said in the first slide, because it could be reducing the space you need for something more important. Okay. And then your referees, always ask permission, and then you're giving the full title. You know, if you're in third level, it would be important maybe to try and get someone from third level, and then where you worked or volunteered. And I've also then put in some action words to remind you, I suppose, when you're writing up your work experience. Here's another, I suppose, what we've expanded on is when you're writing up your work experience, looking at the different areas, whether it's management, financial, technical, research, teaching, communication skills. So looking at the different areas you might have gained your work experience from, there's action words underneath there, and that will actually help you as well to think of it. Okay, sometimes when you're trying to think of it, it is hard thinking of the word at that time. So some common questions, you know, should I include the following? A personal profile, personal statement. You know, it is, I suppose, a short synopsis of your qualification or experience to date, your core skills, your qualities. If you're putting one in, I think it needs to be very much tailored. What I find, my experience from checking them is a lot of students are maybe too confident or not 100% sure of what to write there. So they end up maybe downloading one from the web and it doesn't read well. So I would say you don't need it. It is optional, as I said. And if you're going to include it, read it back and say, does it add value? Like, what's it actually saying? Is what it's saying there going to be covered further down on my CV? Things like your date of birth, marital status, your nationality, again, they're not necessary for your CV. Again, which I've seen recently on CVs is your PPS number. I mean, just be careful what you're putting down. And again, obviously, if you're applying for visa applications, it is a little bit different. Another question students ask me is, how do I write about my final dissertation, my final year project? So again, you mention your final year thesis or your project, give the title of it, and then underneath it again, maybe some bullet points. Undertook research in the growth of the internationalization in business, designed, distributed, analyzed, analyzed the findings, produced a report, and concluded with the following. So with your college projects, you're giving the title, 2 to 3 lines explaining it. Again, did you do it on your own? Was there an employer involved? Maybe what technologies used? Because this again can maybe help you in your application or can help you stand out compared to somebody else. Okay, and I suppose more so too if you're struggling to have maybe related work experience, focusing on your work on your college projects and dissertations can open can close that gap for you. So some basic principles to remember. The relevance, research the sector, the employer, the job description. Again, the order, put the information that's important first and give it the most space. The format, make it easy to read. Normally, it's 2 pages of an A4. But again, sometimes for your first graduate CV, it may go on to 2.5 pages. But once you get your first position, that can be reduced. Attention to detail, check your spelling, your grammar. Be aware of cut and paste. A lot of people cut and paste and then they don't kind of read back and see how it looks like. And again, think about an effective covering letter as well. Common mistakes that you see over and over again are spelling errors, too much or too little information, irrelevant details, including age, photographs. There's no personality in the CV. It's just someone's just written without even thinking about it. The presentation style is poor. There's dull vocabulary, but if you use action words, that helps to kind of liven up your CV. And it's, another mistake, it's too general or not even targeted. So start with a clear understanding of what the sector is looking for, and go back to the job spec. So that helps you with your CV, putting it together. Ensure your CV is targeted and relevant. And again, use the best examples you've got from your experience as well. And then review it and ask yourself as you read through it, so what? I've mentioned this, so what? Is it actually going to help the employer? And then I would encourage you to ask others for feedback, and all of you kind of familiarize yourself with the career services in your college as well. Don't lie, as I kind of said to you earlier on as well. So covering letters. Your covering letter is not the first page of a CV. A lot of people are doing that. It is a separate document and should be saved, using your name like your CV. It's certainly worthwhile spending a little time to create a good covering letter. Emphasizing the covering letter, what you can do for them. Don't be afraid to be enthusiastic. And again, it needs to be polite and not overly formal. So you have the opening, say which job you're applying for, maybe they saw it. Tell them why you're a good candidate, why them, explain why you're interested in the job and the company. And the end, it's a closing sentence, referencing your CV and your availability. Always, I suppose, I encourage you to write a covering letter, try and find out who you're writing it to. And then if it's the Dear Mr. Wright, you're finishing it with yours sincerely. And if you don't know who you're writing it, it's yours faithfully. So, highlight the key skills you have, the opening paragraph, outline the purpose of the letter, why you want the job, demonstrate your interest and enthusiasm, and why you're interested in that particular employer as well, and then your closing paragraph. All these are important to keep in mind. So in summary, do construct your CV with a prospective employer in mind. Do tailor your CV to the job, and do make your CV clear, neat, and tidy. Now, my presentation is available for you to have later on as well, so I'm not going to kind of maybe talk through every line of it here. Do view your experience in a positive light. Do place important information up front as well, and put your name and email on the end of each page. Do use positive language. Do create concrete outcomes to support your claims as well. Don't include information which may be viewed negatively. Don't include anything that might discriminate against you. Again, don't include salary information and expectations. And I suppose don't make your CV more than 2 pages long. But in saying that, for your first graduate CV, it may go into the 2.5 pages. But there could be ways first you could reduce it. But if there's important information and it goes on to 2.5 pages, that's not the end of the world. And again, don't dilute important information. Again, all of us are use a lot of jargon related to our areas of work or studies. So again, keep an eye on the jargon we use, the acronyms, the technical terms, and are they essential, or does somebody else know what they mean? Don't lie, and again, don't include photographs. So suppose just before I finish, to kind of say, with your CV, keep the employer in mind. So the employer has a job spec. They expect you then to put your CV together, and the CVs come in. If there's a clear match, you're called for an interview when they're looking at it, and if there's an unclear match, it's a letter of refusal. And the student then, you'll analyse the vacancy, you'll analyse your suitability, you'll take the option A and demonstrate a clear match between you and the role, and then that increases your chances of an interview. But if you go option B and send in a generic CV, there may be no interview at all. So thank you very much. I know it's a kind of a whistle-stop presentation, but I am available for questions if anyone has any there in the chat.
Thanks, Angela. Really, really appreciate your time and your insights. Really, really good practical tips. So we have loads of questions. I don't think I'm going to get to all of them, unfortunately, but I'll try and get through as many as I can. So you touched on a lot of the answers people are looking for in the presentation. So I might just be expanding on a couple of bits. So there's one here which I think is really relevant for graduates, or maybe people who are just about to leave college, which is, if you've no relevant work experience, what is the best way to show my expertise in that area? Should I include modules from my degree?
Absolutely. And that's why I suppose I've encouraged you to put in your subjects and then any projects attached to it and your dissertation. So definitely that's a good idea.
Okay, good. And another one here, which is, so say you've only worked in a job, maybe on a short-term contract for 3 months, it was part-time or whatever. Should you put that on your CV? Should you make it stand out?
Definitely put in your CV, because as I said earlier on, you'll always gain transferable skills that are useful for an employer. And if you leave it out, it's causing a gap on your CV.
Yeah, I think all experience is good experience, I think, is a general rule. I know you touched as well on having gaps in your CV, but this question maybe just wants you to delve a little bit more into it, saying, how do you account for this within your kind of listed experiences? Do you use 1 or 2 sentences to explain it? Do you leave that to the cover letter?
I would put it into your CV, because when you're going through your CV, it is chronological, and you're starting now and working back. So, it depends maybe on what the gaps are or how long the gaps are. But you might say, look, for the following summer, I took some time out to travel. So account for the times and put a note in. If you require more details, feel free to ask me.
Excellent.
So,
and I think this,
time, you're accounting for the time, and then you're saying, look, if you want to find more details, feel free to ask me, and then you'll think about it for the interview.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said throughout the presentation as well, kind of honesty is the best policy. Don't lie about it as well either. Maybe just finish up with this one as well, which I think is interesting, which is it mandatory to include the interests and referee section? Will CVs not be considered by maybe someone in HR if there are sections missing?
No, you can. I mean, the reference section, you can say, look, reference is available on request. But I think the interest and hobbies sometimes can just make you just stand out from somebody else, depending what your interest and hobbies. And sometimes your interests and hobbies could be related to the industry you're going into. So, you don't have to put them in, but, you don't have to give pages of them either. You can reference them. I don't know whether that answers that, Piers.
No, I think it does. I think you answered all the questions kind of short, sharp and sweet, Angela. So look, again, really, really appreciate it. Thanks for your time and for answering the questions at the end. As you said there, look, this presentation, will be available for everyone who's watching. If you did join midway through and you missed the start, you'll be able to watch the session right from the start again right here, or it will be uploaded on the Grad Island YouTube channel shortly after the fair as well. So I'd just like to thank Angela again for her time. And the next session taking place is going to be hosted by John Slattery, CEO of Inspo, and he's going to be talking about resilience and the resolve to succeed. So just make sure you tune in for that one in about 10 minutes time. But again, Angela, thank you so much.
Thanks a million. Take care. Bye. Best of luck, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.